There's a life you're living right now, and you know it's not the one you're capable of. It's smaller, quieter, more mediocre than what you see when you close your eyes and imagine who you could be. You've been failing not in one dramatic collapse, but in 1,000 small surrenders, 1,000 moments where you chose comfort over growth, ease over effort, the path of least resistance over the path that builds something real. And you've told yourself stories about why the timing wasn't right, the circumstances weren't perfect. You didn't have the resources, the support, the lucky break. But deep down, you know the truth. You've been failing because you've been running the same operating system, the same patterns, the same behaviors that create failure, and expecting somehow to stumble into success. The Stoics had a word for this kind of thinking. They called it folly, the belief that you can keep being who you've been and somehow arrive somewhere different. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Such as are your habitual thoughts, such will be the character of your mind." Your habitual thoughts have been failure thoughts. Your habitual actions have been failure actions. Your habitual choices have created a failure life, not because you're broken, not because you're cursed, but because you've been running the wrong program, and a wrong program executed perfectly still produces wrong results. But here's what most people miss. Failure isn't a state, it's a pattern. It's a collection of specific behaviors, specific thoughts, specific choices that compound into outcomes you don't want. And if failure is a pattern, that means it can be interrupted, it can be replaced, it can be ended, not with hope, not with wishes, not with another attempt at motivation, but with specific, precise interventions that kill the exact mechanisms that have been creating failure. And that's what we're doing today. We're identifying the specific patterns that create failure in your life, and we're giving you the specific antidotes, the exact behaviors, the precise commitments that end each failure pattern permanently. This isn't theory, this is execution. This isn't inspiration, this is elimination. We're ending the life of failure with surgical precision, and once these patterns die, once you've killed the mechanisms that created mediocrity, what's left is someone capable of building the life you've been imagining. Let's begin. Kill the pattern, waiting for perfect conditions. The first failure pattern, the one that's probably cost you more than any other, is waiting. Waiting for the right time, waiting for perfect conditions, waiting for certainty, waiting to feel ready. And while you wait, years disappear, people pass you by, opportunities evaporate, and you comfort yourself with the thought that at least you didn't fail, at least you didn't try and fall short. You stayed safe, you stayed smart, you waited for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment is a myth. It's a comfortable lie you tell yourself to justify inaction, and every day you spend waiting is a day spent failing, just failing, quietly, failing invisibly, failing in a way that doesn't feel like failure because you never actually tried. Seneca wrote, "While we wait for life, life passes." You've been waiting and your life has been passing. And if you keep waiting, you'll wake up one day too old, too tired, too far behind to ever catch up. So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern forever. You adopt the 72-hour rule every time you have an idea, every time you see an opportunity, every time you know something needs doing. You take action within 72 hours, not perfect action, not complete action, just first action. You move, you email, you call, you show up. You put something in motion within 72 hours, no exceptions, because 72 hours is long enough to think it through, but short enough that you can't rationalize yourself out of it. And here's what this does. It rewires your brain from waiting mode to action mode, from someday to now, from perfect to good enough to start. You stop asking, "Is this the right time?" and start asking, "What can I do right now?" You stop waiting for certainty and start building it through action. The person who waits for perfect conditions never starts. The person who acts within 72 hours builds momentum, and momentum solves problems waiting never could. So that's the first pattern you kill. waiting, and you kill it with the 72-hour rule idea. To action in 3 days every single time. Implement this now, not after you finish watching. Not tomorrow now. What's one thing you've been waiting on? What's one opportunity you've been thinking about for weeks or months? You have 72 hours to take first action, or you've already failed and the life of failure continues. Kill the pattern. Lacking skin in the game. The second failure pattern is trying things without consequence, dabbling without commitment, exploring without skin in the game. You say you're working on something, but you haven't invested anything real, no money, no public commitment. No bridges burned, no point of no return, and because there's no real cost to quitting, you quit the moment it gets hard, the moment it gets uncomfortable, the moment it stops being fun. This is why you've started 100 things and finished none. Why your life is littered with abandoned projects, half-learned skills, businesses that never launched. You're not actually failing because you're not actually trying. You're performing, trying, you're cosplaying. Commitment while keeping all your exit routes open. Epictetus taught, if you wish to be a writer, write. If you wish to improve, be content to appear foolish and stupid. But you're not content to appear foolish. You're protecting your ego by never fully committing, by never putting real skin in the game. So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You create real stakes. You make it expensive to quit. You tell people what you're doing, not for validation, but for accountability. You say publicly, I'm building X, I'm becoming Y. I'm committing to Z, and now quitting has social cost. You invest money you can't afford to lose. You prepay for 6 months of whatever you're committing to. You hire the coach, join the program, buy the equipment. And now quitting has financial cost. You set deadlines with consequences. You tell someone, if I don't do X by Y, I'll donate $500 to a cause I hate. And now quitting has real penalty. You burn bridges to the old version. You quit the job, end the relationship, move to the new city. And now going back isn't an option. Skin in the game changes everything. It transforms, dabbling into commitment, exploring into execution, trying into doing. Because when quitting costs you something real. You don't quit when it gets hard. You push through. You figure it out. You become the person who can handle it. The person with no skin in the game quits easily. The person with everything on the line finds a way. So that's the second pattern you kill. Lack of commitment, and you kill it by creating real stakes, real consequences, real costs for quitting. What are you currently working on without skin in the game? Put something real on the line today. Money, reputation, public commitment. Something that makes quitting painful, or admit you're not actually serious and stop pretending. Kill the pattern, isolation, and echo chambers. The third failure pattern, and this one's subtle, is surrounding yourself with people who either don't challenge you or don't exist at all. You're either isolated, doing everything alone with no one to call you on your bullshit, no one to push you beyond what you think you're capable of, or you're in an echo chamber surrounded by people at your level or below, people who validate your limitations, who agree that the obstacles are too big, the timing too bad, the challenges too hard, and in either case, you stagnate because growth requires resistance, and you've eliminated all resistance from your environment. Marcus Aurelius had advisors who challenged him. Epictetus taught students who questioned him. Seneca engaged with minds that made him sharper. They didn't isolate, and they didn't surround themselves with yes men. So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You deliberately build asymmetric relationships. You find people who are where you want to be, and you create value for them in exchange for proximity. You join spaces where you're the dumbest person in the room, where everyone else is five steps ahead of you, and you let that discomfort pull you forward. You hire coaches, mentors, guides, people who are paid to tell you uncomfortable truths, who have no incentive to protect your feelings. You create an accountability group, 3 to 5 people who meet weekly, who share commitments, who call each other out when they're making excuses, and you eliminate the relationships that keep you small. The friends who celebrate mediocrity, the family who says, be realistic, the circle that needs you to stay exactly who you've been. You don't fight with them. You don't convince them, you just create distance through selective unavailability because you can't grow in an environment that needs you, small Carl Jung said. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but you can't become who you truly are while surrounded by people who need you to stay who you've always been. So that's the third pattern. You kill isolation and echo chambers. And you kill it by deliberately building an environment that pulls you forward, that challenges you, that makes staying the same more uncomfortable than changing who in your life is 5 steps ahead of you. Who do you need to reach out to? Who makes you uncomfortable? And who in your life keeps you small? Who needs distance? Act on both today, kill the pattern. Consuming without creating. The fourth failure pattern is consumption addiction. You spend your life taking in information, reading, watching, listening, learning, but never actually building, never creating, never producing. You're the person who's read 100 books on business but never started one, who's watched countless videos on fitness but never transformed, who knows all the theory but has zero practice. And you've convinced yourself that learning is progress, that consumption is action, that knowing is the same as doing, but it's not. Knowing without doing is just entertainment consumption. Without creation is just distraction, and every hour you spend consuming is an hour. You're not building an hour of your life that produced nothing. Seneca warned, we suffer more from imagination than reality. And consumption is imagination. It's imagining yourself as the person who does the thing while never actually doing it. So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You implement the creation ratio for every hour. You consume, you create for 2 hours. You watch 1 hour of content, you produce for 2. You read for 1 hour, you build for 2. And this ratio forces you to become selective about what you consume because you can't consume everything. When consumption creates creation, obligation, and you define creation clearly. Creation is output that exists outside your head, writing code, products, content, companies, anything that can be pointed to and said, I made that. Thinking doesn't count. Planning doesn't count. Learning doesn't count. Only creation counts. And here's what happens when you implement this ratio. You stop being a professional learner and become an actual builder. You realize that most of what you were consuming wasn't actually necessary. You were just avoiding the discomfort of creating something real. Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Stop consuming content about what you should build and build it. Stop learning about transformation and transform. Stop studying success and succeed. That's the fourth pattern. You kill consumption without creation, and you kill it with the ratio 2 hours of creation for every hour of consumption. What have you consumed today? What will you create to balance it? Start now. Kill the pattern. No metrics, no truth. The fifth failure pattern is operating without data, without metrics, without measurement. You say you're doing better. You think you're making progress. You feel like you're on track, but you have no actual numbers, no objective measurements, no data that proves anything, and this lets you lie to yourself, lets you feel productive while producing nothing, lets you claim improvement while staying exactly the same because feelings lie, perceptions distort, memory edits itself, but numbers don't lie. If you're not measuring, you're not managing, you're just hoping. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But how do you know if you're doing what you have to do if you're not measuring the actual results? So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You identify the 5 key metrics that actually matter in your life. Not vanity metrics, not things that make you feel good, but real measurements of real progress for your body, It might be weight, body fat, percentage, strength. Metrics, PRs, actual measurable physical capacity for your work. It might be revenue hours of deep work projects completed, concrete deliverables produced for your relationships. It might be meaningful conversations, quality time, invested value, created for others, for your character. It might be commitments kept, word-honored promises followed through. Days you lived by your principles. Whatever your metrics are, you choose 5 maximum, and you track them daily in a spreadsheet on paper. Somewhere you can see trend lines, and you review weekly. Are the numbers going up or down? Are you actually improving or just feeling like you are? And here's what measurement does. It kills self-deception. It forces honesty. It shows you reality regardless of how you feel. You can't trick the data. You can't lie to the spreadsheet. The numbers are what they are, and when you see the numbers, when you track consistently, you make better decisions because you're operating from truth, not from feeling. The person without metrics drifts. The person with metrics steers. So that's the 5th pattern. You kill operating without data, and you kill it by choosing 5 key metrics and tracking them daily. What are your 5 metrics? When will you start tracking? Today, or you're still failing. Kill the pattern. No morning, no day. The 6th failure pattern, and this might be the most important, is losing your mornings. You wake up reactive, you check your phone, you respond to messages, you let other people's priorities dictate your first thoughts, your first actions, your first energy. And by the time you get to what actually matters, you're already depleted, already fragmented, already behind. The morning is when you have the most energy, the clearest mind, the strongest discipline, and you're giving it away to email, to social media, to other people's emergencies. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Notice when you wake up. Not after you've been awake for hours. The first thoughts, the first moments. Those set everything. So, here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You claim your morning. You build a non-negotiable first 3 hours that belong only to you. You wake up same time every day, not when you feel like it. Same time regardless, and for the first 3 hours you don't check anything. You don't respond to anything. You don't let the outside world in. Instead, you execute your morning protocol. Maybe it's train first, physical discipline before mental work. Maybe it's create first 2 hours of deep work before you check email. Maybe it's think first. Silence, meditation, writing before you engage with anyone. Whatever your protocol is, it's non-negotiable. It happens every single day, before anything else. And here's why. This kills failure, because the person who controls their morning controls their day. The person who wins the morning builds momentum that carries through. The person who starts reactive stays reactive all day. But the person who starts intentional creates from that intention. You can lose the afternoon, you can lose the evening, but if you win the morning, if you do what matters most before the world makes demands, you've already won the day. Seneca wrote, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. And each life begins when you wake, so begin it right. Begin it intentionally. Begin it on your terms." That's the 6th pattern you kill, losing your morning, and you kill it with a protocol 3 hours minimum. Same every day, non-negotiable. What's your morning protocol? When does it start? Tomorrow, or you've already lost the day. Kill the pattern, never going deep. The 7th and final pattern is surface level everything. You're interested in many things, but committed to nothing. You dabble, you explore, you try a little of this, a little of that. You're a generalist, but not by choice, by avoidance. Because going deep is hard. Going deep requires focus, requires saying no to other things, requires staying with discomfort long enough to break through. And you've been avoiding that. You've been telling yourself you're keeping options open. You're exploring, you're learning. What you're really doing is avoiding the discomfort of mastery. Mastery requires depth, requires 10,000 hours in one thing, requires being willing to be mediocre for years before you're excellent, and you haven't been willing to pay that price. Aristotle wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. But habits require repetition, and repetition requires depth, and depth requires commitment to one thing over many things. So here's the antidote. Here's how you kill this pattern. You choose one thing, one primary focus, one domain where you'll go deep for the next 1,000 days, minimum. Not 10 things, not 5, one thing that matters most. One thing that, if you mastered it, would transform everything, and you commit to depth. You commit to 10 hours per week minimum in deliberate practice, not consuming about it, not thinking about it. Actual practice, actual reps, actual skill development. And for those 1,000 days, you say no to everything else that pulls you away from depth. No new interests, no shiny objects, no diversions, just depth, just focus, just one thing done excellently instead of many things done poorly. And here's what happens when you go deep. When you commit to mastery of one thing, you develop real skill, not surface knowledge, but actual capability. You build something valuable that can't be copied because it took years to develop. You gain respect from people who recognize the difference between dabbling and mastery, and you prove to yourself that you can complete something, that you can see something. Through that, you're not just a collector of interests, but a builder of skill. The person who goes wide knows a little about everything and masters nothing. The person who goes deep becomes someone others seek out, need, respect. So that's the 7th pattern. You kill surface level everything, and you kill it by choosing one thing and committing to 1,000 days of depth. What's your one thing? What are you committing to? Choose now or stay shallow forever. The death of failure. Now you have them 7 specific patterns, 7 specific antidotes, waiting killed by 72-hour rule, no skin in the game killed by creating stakes, isolation killed by asymmetric relationships, consumption killed by creation ratio, no metrics killed by tracking 5 losing mornings, killed by protocol, surface level killed by depth commitment. And here's what you need to understand. These aren't suggestions, these aren't nice ideas, these aren't things to try, these are executions. These are the specific interventions that end the specific patterns that have been creating failure. You don't need all 7. Maybe you only need 3. Maybe you only need 1, but whichever patterns you recognize in yourself, whichever mechanisms you see creating your failure, you implement the antidote. Not eventually, not when ready, now, because every day you run. The failure pattern is a day spent failing, and you've spent enough days, weeks, months, years living a life of failure. Not dramatic failure, quiet failure, invisible failure, the failure of potential, unrealized of capabilities, unused of a life that could have been something but stayed small. Seneca wrote, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." You've wasted enough. These 7 antidotes. They're not complex, they're not mysterious, they're just specific, and they work. 72-hour rule ends, waiting stakes, end dabbling asymmetric relationships, end isolation, creation ratio ends, consumption metrics end, self-deception, morning protocol ends, reactivity depth commitment ends, surface level implement them, and the patterns die. And when the patterns die, when the mechanisms of failure stop running, what's left is someone capable of building the life you've been imagining. Not someday, not eventually, now, because the patterns are gone. Hemtaram. The life that begins. Here's what people don't tell you about ending the life of failure. When the patterns die, when you're not waiting anymore, not dabbling, not isolated, not consuming, not lying to yourself, not losing mornings, not staying shallow. When all of that ends, something else begins. You start building actual momentum, actual results, actual transformation, because you're no longer fighting against yourself, no longer sabotaging, no longer running programs designed To create failure, you're running new programs, 72-hour action stakes and commitment relationships that pull you up. Creation, overconsumption, truth. Through metrics, mornings that set your day depth over breadth, and those programs, when run consistently, produce different results, not overnight, not magically, but systematically through compound effect of right patterns executed daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances. Action, what stands in the way, becomes the way." These 7 patterns, they've been standing in your way. They've been the impediment, but now they become the way, because ending them creates the path forward. You don't need to figure out some complex strategy, some elaborate plan. You just need to kill the patterns, creating failure, and build from what's left. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. You've said what you would be, now do what you have to do. Implement the antidotes, kill the patterns, end the life of failure, and begin the life that's been waiting for you to be ready. The life where you act within 72 hours, where you have skin in the game, where you're surrounded by people who pull you up, where you create more than consume, where you track truth, where you own your mornings, where you go deep. That life, it's not coming when conditions are perfect. It's not coming when you're ready. It's not coming at all, unless you build it by killing. What's killing you, so kill it. Implement the antidotes, end the patterns, and watch what happens when failure finally dies. And what's born from that death is who you were always capable of becoming. Stay focused, stay grounded. The life of failure ends when you decide. It ends and you implement what actually works. These 7 things, they're not the only way, but they're a way that works. And if you're tired of failing, if you're done with mediocrity, if you're ready for the life you know you're capable of, then implement them, not tomorrow, now, because every moment you delay is another moment of the life of failure, and you've lived that life long enough. End it today with these